Hope everyone is safe and well. 1 year has passed since the first wave of Corona. The digital we moved from. And yet, here we are still struggling with the digital infrastructure. The second surge. In many regards, the second surge is going to test us through new ways when compared to the first wave. In terms of the educational sector in India, the second surge has already made us change our ways again. Educational institutions are operating behind closed doors again, exams are online again, digital classrooms are the not so new norms now. Maybe this change will the global pandemic has compelled us to adopt might stay here for good. And though today's at talk, we will look deeper by analyzing the new perspective in the Indian education sector. For this, we have one of the most reputed speaker, Dr. Shauli Mukherjee, the director of School of Education, Dean Student Affairs at Adamas University, and former founder and principal of Adamas World School and STEM World School, the first STEM school in West Bengal. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, for that warm and wonderful introduction. And wishing all of you a very, very good evening to all the viewers. And I'm really, looking forward to today's discussion. And thank you so much for having me on this platform today.
Right, ma'am. So, ma'am, what's your view on the current the education system as the pandemic is on surge and everything is completely locked down? So, what are your views on that?
So, Pallavi, in order to answer your question, let me first start with a very important statistics pertaining to the outcome of higher education in our country, which we have seen for the past few decades or so. So we see that almost 50% of the graduates do not even manage to get a decent job after completion of their formal higher education.
True, ma'am.
And employers would moreover reconfirm the fact that 80% or more than 80% of the ones who do manage to get a job somehow are not skilled enough to retain that job. And they have to be reskilled and they have to be reoriented on the job front. So if one of the major aims of our current education system is to ensure a somewhat decent living after the completion of the formal education, we cannot help but agree to the fact that our current education system is miserably failing. And there are obvious reasons for that. You see, our current education system is based on a system of standardization. It's based on a system of conformance and compliance. It does not give importance to the learner's creativity and innovation. So if you see that over the past few decades, our histories have changed, our geographies have changed, but unfortunately, there has been no major transformation or shift in our education system. It is still based on, traditional and conventional educational norms, which force our learners metaphorically to still color and draw within the lines. That is to conform, to comply, and to compete. Every child is given the same amount of time to learn the same thing in the same way and preferably on the same day. So it's not a wonder that, the students or the learners or our children, they struggle to realize their true potential. In fact, if you see, our current education system is basically, it relies on two important foundations or premises. One being the industrial factory model of productivity, which promotes a one-size-fits-all culture. And secondly, it heavily draws upon the prison culture or the prison norm. when I say the prison culture, what I'm trying to mean is that if you consider the system of roll call that happens in the school, or the system of the children coming in the same uniform, the students still, even in this 21st century, in the standard classrooms, they're sitting in rows and columns. These are all the things which have come from the prison culture. The convicts were made to be in different cells so that they could create less chaos and less destruction. So it's unfortunate that even now in this 21st century, in order to avoid chaos and less disturbance in the classroom management strategies, we still make our children, our small children, sit in rows and columns in desks.
Right.
So nothing much has changed. Even if you see a very important indicator, that is the level and the rates of dropouts, which have increased significantly across all the stages of our education system. So that is very, very alarming. But that is only the tip of an iceberg. Even more alarming is the percentage of the students who maybe do not technically drop out from the system, who stay in the system, but they remain completely disengaged with the entire process of education. And it's not their fault. It's because of a very narrow and a very disengaging curriculum which fails to speak to their passion, to their interest, and to their talents. But this is something which is so very important because it has a very, very significant bearing on how they will grow up into. Because we see that, it is said that if you fail to engage the learners, you end up in enraging them. So this is something so very important because these disinterested learners, these disengaged learners often grow up and choose professions, choose careers where they are equally disinterested. They do not love the work that they do, but somehow they endure because maybe because of the societal pressure or maybe because of the financial constraints. But that is not the way in which a person should live, right? I mean, the purpose of education, the purpose of real education is to broaden, is to widen our minds and our horizons so that we can actually lead a free, happy, fulfilling, and creative life. And in order to do that, the factory model of productivity, which still guides our education system, has to give way to a more fulfilling, more creative, and a more happy and personalized form of education.
Ma'am, adding to this factory model which you mentioned in your the words, I just wanted to know, like in today's scenario, like before the pandemic started, before this corona came, so we were into industrial knowledge also, like colleges and the university, and even schools also. They give opportunity to the students that they can go for to gain the industrial knowledge, like on the ground knowledge of what they are studying into. So, what are your views on this, considering the today's situation?
Pallavi, that is good. I mean, when there is an academia and industry connect, I mean, that is how it should be. But in the real practice, if you see, there is a widening gap between academia and industry.
Okay.
And when I say there's a widening gap between academia and industry, what I mean is that industry expectation, industry standards, and industry readiness. It is undoubtedly a fact that academia is failing to prepare our young learners to face the industry standards and expectations. And the major implications of that being that the system is increasingly churning out more job seekers rather than job creators.
Right, ma'am.
So that is exactly what is happening.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely right. I just really accept the words which you are saying. So, adding to that, my next question to you is why is there a need to transform or redefine our current education system?
I would like to say, Pallavi, that there is an urgent and pressing need to reimagine and redefine and, I would say, transform our current education system. And let me give you some, some examples, some instances. So if you see the system of standardized tests, the system of standardized tests, which is prevalent across all levels of our education, it heavily relies on conformance and compliance. It does not give any leverage. It does not give any priority on a child's creativity and a child's innovation. So that is not given any sort of weightage. So it's only you have to comply and you have to conform in order to pass those standardized tests. So there is absolutely no scope to showcase and exhibit your creativity and your innovation. Secondly, right from the very childhood, we insist our children to draw and color within the lines. So isn't it an irony that we expect the same child, where the same child will grow up, the child will grow up to be an out of the box thinker? I mean, how is that even possible? You are actually training the child to color and draw within the lines. You cannot expect that person to, evolve into a kind of a person who can think and act out of the box when he grows up. I mean, these two things are very, very much in, contrast to each other. Then if you see that, our current education system relies heavily on the children's ability to come up with one correct answer for the questions asked, and does not give importance, or it does not encourage where a child can come up with a thoughtful and a right answer, right question. So, we have to encourage the children to come up with the correct question rather than to come up with one correct answer. Additionally, I would also like to say that our education system gives too much of significance and emphasis on only one kind of quotient, and that is intelligence quotient. So it's always about IQ, IQ, and IQ. Though significant research has proved that if you really want to excel and if you really want to succeed in your life, be it professionally or be it personally, more than 80% of your success in real life actually depends on your EQ. It depends on your emotional quotient. It depends on your ability to express your emotions, to manage your emotions, and very importantly, to understand others' emotions as well. So, if that is so, then why does our current education system give so much of emphasis on intelligence quotient and so very less emphasis on emotional quotient? Again, if you see right from the very childhood, we tell our children, or we try to impress upon our children the very fact that it's very important to come first in everything. Be it academics, or be it extracurricular activities, be it sports, or be it any events. So you always have to come first in everything, right? So you have to compete. So there is a cutthroat competition always. Though on the other hand, the two very important skill sets that are required to sustain and thrive in this 21st century happens to be cooperation and collaboration. So if that is so, why do we give so much of importance to competition and so less emphasis on collaboration and cooperation? So, sometimes I feel that we are doing everything in an incorrect manner. We tend to give more emphasis on what a child can't do rather than what a child can do. We always tend to emphasize, the current education system always emphasizes on the wrong things rather than on the right things. So this is my honest feeling, Pallavi, that I feel that a quick fix or a repair or a tweak is not what is required. Because when we speak about reformation, What we are trying to mean is that we're trying to repair a broken model. That is not what is required for our current education system. Our current education system needs a complete overhaul. It needs a complete revolution. Nothing short of a revolution will work for our current education system. So it's not reformation, it's not repair, it's not a tweak or a slight change, but a complete transformation, a complete revolution. That is what is required in our current education system if we are thoughtful about the future of our children, whom we want them to thrive in this 21st century VUCA world.
Right, ma'am. Ma'am, I just want to ask another question regarding the answer which you just gave to us. Is that you mentioned EQ. So, do you believe that everyone should go for EQ training or programs? They should enroll themselves. As you mentioned, it's a very, very important part for the professional life and for the personal life of individual. So, the like individual should go and enroll themselves for such EQ programs, emotional intelligence programs, and they should balance their mental balance and for their own happiness. Should they go for such programs?
Uh, Rather, what I feel is that our education system should be such, it, it should give more emphasis on EQ rather than IQ. And it's not only EQ, Pallavi. It's about the other quotients as well. What about developing and nurturing and honing the HQ, that is the happiness quotient, the PQ, the passion quotient, the CQ, the creativity quotient, the SQ, the social quotient, the spirituality quotient, and most importantly, judging by what we are all going through in the current scenario, what about honing our children's AQ, adversity quotient? Is how to deal with the uncertainties of life, how to deal with the vagaries of life.
True, ma'am.
So there is so much uncertainty in our life. How would our children deal with that? So adversity quotient will take care of that. So our education system should give due emphasis on all the other kinds of quotient and stop emphasizing only on IQ. I'm not trying to say that IQ is not important, but what I'm trying to say is that the other quotients are equally, if not more important.
True, right, ma'am. Ma'am, my next question to you is how can our education system be redefined or reimagined?
So, in order to answer this question, I would like to say that everyone should come forward if there has to be any kind of change, any kind of visible and any kind of tangible change. So everyone has to come forward, and when I say everyone, it means the teachers, the educators, the education leaders, the education policymakers, so the entire educational fraternity. I'm sorry, I cannot also exclude the parents from here. So every one of us must come together in order to reimagine and redefine our current education system if there has to be any kind of visible and tangible changes or differences in the way of its working. So no matter whatever the situation might be, we still consider teaching to be, the noblest of all professions, because it is one such profession which creates all the other professions, and it's still in their hands that the future of our nation lies. And it is very, very important for the educators now more than ever to realize that the emerging and changing world of the 21st century, it does not require mechanically trained minds loaded with facts and figures. Mechanically trained minds which are systematically formulated to think alike. No, that is not what we require. What we require are the minds which are capable of divergent thinking, minds which are capable of out of the box ideation. So that is what we require. And in order to nurture those creative minds, I think there has to be a complete uh, redefining of the roles, reimagining of the roles of the educators as well. I mean, they also have to realize that they themselves have to be lifelong and self motivated learners. That across all significant phases of their lives, they have to be committed to learning, unlearning, and relearning in a continuous way. That learning is something which cannot be, it's not that after the completion of your formal higher education, your learning stops. Rather, from there, your learning begins, right? So it is a continuous journey. And even the 21st century educators, I sometimes feel that there has to be a very, very striking combination in them. That is, they must have a beginner's mindset,
Right.
and at the same time, they must have a challenging mindset. When I say a beginner's mindset, I mean that they must be completely adaptable, flexible, and responsive to all the new forms of learning. They have to be responsive to that. So that is what I mean by beginner's mindset. And at the same time, they also must have a challenging spirit, a questioning spirit, to challenge and question everything around them that has become redundant, that has become obsolete. So this combination is very much required in the making of a 21st century educator. Along with that, I would also like to mention that, uh, you know, uh, it required one C, that is Corona or COVID, whatever you may call, to bring about the power and importance of another C, that is the importance of cooperation and collaboration. It is now more than ever that the teachers have understood that they cannot continue to work in silos anymore. They have to collaborate with each other. They have to exchange their viewpoints. They have to collaborate, and they have to, they have to continuously emerge to be better educators in days to come. As it is said that, as a teacher, the greatest resource that you can have is each other. Without collaboration, your growth is limited only to your own perspective. Additionally, Pallavi, I would also like to mention that it is very important to admit, appreciate that teaching is not a mechanical task of transferring of facts and content from one to another. No, that is not what teaching is. In fact, teaching is the most creative and most sophisticated profession, which enables the young learners to evolve into their most authentic, dynamic, and confident selves. And though, we make a mistake of sometimes saying that I'm a teacher of English, I'm a teacher of maths, I'm a teacher of science. No, that is not what we are. We do not teach subjects, we teach the learners. And the learners are basically human beings. So teaching is a human profession. So the human element in the education system has to be retained, or it has to be brought back if you really have to see any visible or tangible change in our current education system.
Rightly said, ma'am. Rightly said, and really justified. Uh, to add upon this, how can our educator prepare the learners for this refined system of education?
A lot of things need to be done. Firstly, I think, the educators need to facilitate that love for lifelong learning among the young learners. So they have to make them realize, by being a role model themselves, that learning is something which will not stop at the end of your formal education, but it will continue all throughout your life. That you will continue to learn new things, you will continue to acquire new skills and embed new habits. And this is how, you will evolve through your experiences, and that is how you will continue to sustain and thrive in the 21st century VUCA world, which is a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Also, I think that it is very, very important to make our young learners understand the fact that it's not important how much you know. I mean, the world is not changed by how much you know, but the world definitely gets changed by what you decide to do with what you know. And for that, it is very, very important to realize why you are doing what you are doing. So the factor of why is very important. So to create a bigger purpose for everything that you do, that is something which is very, very important. We also need to allow our young learners more time, which they can effectively utilize in, following their curiosity, creating, sharing, exchanging, and experimenting with new and novel ideas. We as responsible adults, be as parents or as educators, we ourselves first have to stop stigmatizing failures and mistakes. And we have to realize that failures and mistakes both are essential and integral component of the learning experience. So we have to stop stigmatizing these two things. That is also very important. And also, I would like to say that if we really want our present generation to evolve into creative problem solvers, we must give them ample scope to pursue the three essential P's. And by the three essential P's, I mean play, passion, and purpose. It is play, passion, and purpose that actually make someone really creative. We have to, uh, you know, uh, encourage our young learners not only to find out innovative solutions to problems, but also to spot the inherent problems in existing solutions. And lastly, I would also like to mention something which is very close to my heart, and I feel that as parents, as well as educators, we have to attempt to develop a growth mindset in the young learners. And by growth mindset, I mean that we ourselves first have to stop emphasizing on the outcomes. Rather, we have to start emphasizing on the process. So that is how a growth mindset develops. So stop concentrating on the outcome. Outcome can be anything, like your board results, your report card, your score sheet, you're getting 10 out of 10 in a particular exam, right? In a particular test. So that is the outcome. Stop emphasizing on the outcome and start emphasizing on the process. What is the process through which the child has achieved that outcome? That is more important. How much effort the child has given, how much struggles the child has encountered, how many times the child has encountered a failure, and through that failure, the child has learned something. So the process is very, very important rather than the outcome. And this this growth mindset is that ability to stretch and expand beyond one's comfort zone to explore new possibilities. And I would also like to mention that we all collectively must emphasize on what our child can do rather than what our child can't do. So emphasize on the positives and you will get back the positive results for sure.
Right, ma'am. Wow, this was one of the most informative session we had, and I hope this shed some light to our viewers, prepare themselves for the new changes we are about to face. I open up the forum for audience to ask any question to ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
ma'am. You were yes, ma'am. Hello, ma'am. You were talking about like a revolution in education system, ma'am. I think that wouldn't too much easy to revolutionize the education system, as we can see some changes we can't get in our country from since the independence. Like it is now, I think 70, 75 years, and still we are going through these traditional things because it is not easy to just change like on the papers, but we have to mentally prepare for that. As we can see, like today's exam. like UPSC, ma'am, like any other JEE exam, main exams, like we can see UPSC. It is the main exam of any country which gives you such offer to be such bureaucrat of any country. So I think it is not so easy. We can revolution the whole system. I think we need to bring some changes by initial stages. After that, we can go further.
Ma'am, you're mute. Can you please? Thank you so much.
Yes. I would like to just add that I'm sorry I don't agree to what you have said. I have a very different opinion on this. I feel that this particular mentality, which enables all of us to think that revolution is not possible, so many major changes are not possible. So this is the kind of mentality which has actually stopped us from achieving whatever we could have achieved. So now I think it is high time that we should all come together, because if a system has to change, a system consists of everybody, right? All the stakeholders. So we all need to have a very, very positive mindset. And in order to bring about any change which is visible and tangible, the first change that is required is a change in the mindset. So if there is not a change in the mindset, there can be no change, uh, which is possible. So the first change is the paradigm shift in the mindset which is required. That yes, this system is no longer working for us, and the system needs a change. So only when you feel that it requires a change, you are ready for that change, and you can be an enabler and influencer to drive that change will happen. But on the other hand side, if we all think that it's not possible, it will not be possible.
Ma'am,
Yes, there
yes,
is
ma'am.
another question. Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I want to ask that, ma'am, as we can see that new education policy, which we're discussing from several years of our country's government about new education policy, ma'am. Like, ma'am, I am an UPSC aspirant. I think I have to go with the traditional system of education because our government, our like anything agencies which are working for that are not doing anything. As we can see, ma'am, new education policy are being discussing is being discussing, I think, about from several years, but in implementation it is like null. We are getting null results, zero results. So ma'am, isn't it the work of like high bureaucrats, high governments say they should focus on that instead? I think we are really, we have to go with that traditional system, because if this time I am not preparing like with that mindset, I often don't get any chance in future to get inside any system or any government, ma'am.
I feel that it is not only the role of a government. I mean, government cannot dictate each and everything that we would like to have. So I feel it is a combined effort, it's a collective effort. So we are all part of the system. And as per the National Education Policy 2020 is concerned, it is a groundbreaking policy. So definitely the success of the system will definitely depend on its implementation, on its proper implementation. But it's definitely very, very progressive, and it already addresses a lot of gaps that we had faced in our education system for the past 5 or 6 decades or so. So I am basically very positive and very hopeful that change will definitely occur. And I believe that with a positive mindset and with a pragmatic and a paradigm shift in the mindset, change will definitely be visible.
Ma'am, I have one question now. So, if we look into our education system, there are many areas right now, like beyond going to the form of reformation and all. Right now, we are facing some challenges, and one of the main challenges, which I also think that this is one of the reasons that we need reformation, is that there is a huge gap between the existing curriculum and the current existing trends in the field. So, where can we start in making these gap come together closer? Where should we start in this regard?
It should start right from the very beginning. It should start right from its very inception, right from the primary level of education, and rather, I would say, from the pre-primary level of education. Because outdated contents which are dissociated with real life context, contents which are completely divorced from our real life experiences, which most of the schools still deliver. Most of the schools means 98% of the schools still deliver outdated contents. So that will only continue to raise a generation of disengaged and disinterested learners, who in turn would become disinterested and disengaged professionals in their later life. So change, any kind of change, will have to happen at the grassroots level, and it has to start right from the pre-primary level. Even if you see, let me just give you an instance. In the kindergarten, we teach A for apple, right? So this is something which even I have been taught by my kindergarten teacher, and my sons also have been taught the same thing. So nothing has changed for the past 40 or 50 years or so. So if I ask you A stands for what, almost 90% of the people would immediately answer A stands for apple. So this is a kind of a conditioning which has been done by that first kindergarten teacher who has taught us A for apple, right? Though A stands for so many other things. So this is a kind of a conditioning. So all these things need to change. Even when we teach a particular child A, B, C, D, I mean, what is the logic behind teaching A, B, C, D? I mean, what's the logic behind teaching B after A and C after B? There is no logic, right? There is absolutely no logic as to why we teach A, B, C, D in that particular sequence. There's definitely a logic behind teaching 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's a logic. But is there any logic behind teaching A, B, C, D, but still we teach that? So all these things require a very deep analysis and definitely a change.
Okay, ma'am. And this is one of the questions that a live user has asked in the YouTube forum. So you said that we have to start reformation of our entire education system. So from where should we start that one? Like, as you said, from the kindergarten itself, we should begin. Like, what would be the first step in that journey?
The first step in the journey would be reframing our curriculum and reframing our pedagogy. So both has to change. Our content has to change. Our method of delivery has to change. Both. And both will go hand in hand. So the content has to be very much relevant to the real life context. It has to be related to our real life experiences. Significant research has proved that anything that you attempt to teach a learner or a child which is not associated with real life context, that goes into his or her short-term memory, that will never go into his long-term memory. So if it has to go into the long-term memory and thereby in the phase of application, then it definitely has to be related to the real life context. So content which is associated with real life context, which a child can actually apply by doing it hands-on, such content has to be there. And there definitely has to be a very, very proper and pragmatic manner of delivering that content. So both content, that is curriculum, as well as pedagogy, that is the manner or the method of delivery, both have to change.
So, ma'am, so instead of having as you said, having an IQ-based system, we should have, I think, a skill-based system, right? If a learner is very much interested and he or she thinks that he has a particular skill, so the education should be provided in a way that that skill is enriched and nourished instead of just going behind IQ, right?
Absolutely. Because what is the importance of that IQ which you will not be able to use or apply in any of the other phases of your life? I mean, education in terms of collection of facts and figures, useful for you to gain a degree or a certificate, that is not the purpose of true education. True or real education will widen or broaden your mindset, your horizons, to enable you to lead a happy, a fulfilling, a creative life. That is what education is for. So if you cannot apply that in your regular day-to-day life, I mean, what is the use of that? I mean, how many of us actually remember what we have learned when we were in grade 6 or grade 7? We do not remember because that was not associated with our real life context. That is the reason we have forgotten. But we have not forgotten a lot of things which are actually related to our day-to-day life. That is something which we have not forgotten and which we will never forget.
Ma'am,
I have one question. Can you allow me?
Please, please.
I'm Professor S.K. Das. I have been in the education sector for like 26 years. Thank you very much, ma'am, bringing a lot of very meaningful insights into the forum. What I need to extend is one thing that in the last, while answering the last question, that you said that there is a need for changes in the content as well as methods. And I would like to add that there must be also, as you rightly said in the initial of your lecture, that there must be a change in the evaluation method too. Because the changes in content and methods will not bring in desirable changes in the entire system. So three things are, the changes are recorded in three aspects. One is that what we are teaching, how we are teaching, then how we are going to evaluate them. You rightly said that the perspective with which we have been in the education sector for last, 30 years or 40 years so, as somebody from Jammu Kashmir, Danish, has been making the kind of question. So what he has been telling that in the last 5 decades, we have this system, the entire education system is highly dominated by the research insights of psychology of education. And we have not given more importance to the sociology of education right now, as you are rightly saying that the collaboration and cooperative techniques are very much required in the classroom structure, where the sociological perspectives are to play a critical role nowadays in the education system. We are not teaching our students how to cooperate. We are not teaching our students to how to go for an apathy, how to be, considerate, how to be, how to respond to the gender equality also. We do not know how to behave properly also within the seniors and, elders. There are so many things which are coming. Ma'am, the one perspective that we would like to bring it to the forum is one that you as a mother, or we all as a parents, we send our children to the schools and colleges for the education purpose. But primary goal of the stakeholders are that there must be a very lucrative job at the end of the education. So can we change that mindset of the parents? If that is not changed, then I think the way the schools and the universities performing their role, or they will be performing their role in the future days, will not be changed. The perspective with which we are sending our children must be changed from the parent side. It is not education which will be bringing the career or to a lucrative job. Rather, education has to be there for a meaningful life. Education has to be there to live peacefully in the society. Education must be there to lead a nation as a citizenship. So these are the value pattern are to be brought into the education system. I hope that you will definitely agree. At the end, ma'am, as you rightly said, that the long-term memory, when we are teaching, on one hand, we are teaching the students that you are rightly saying that the current trend, the paradigm shift in the researches, that the long-term memory, when you look into the long-term memory, then definitely you need to look into the past perspective of the children. So these are all the schema theorists. Basically, the schema theorists in education, they have been talking about what we have already, what we know, or what the children know already, and then what we ought to know or what we intend to teach them, if we connect this between the past and the new knowledge, then the connectivity is created well, and then the long-term memory is built up. Ma'am, looking at all these perspectives, will you please emphasize on 2 or 3 aspects? How do you project yourself or your thinking processes on National Education Policy 2020, looking at all these perspectives that we have been speaking about? Thank you, ma'am.
First of all, I would like to say that in terms of when I spoke about a change in the content, curriculum, as well as the methodology and pedagogy, I think much earlier I had spoken at least twice that the current education system relies heavily on standardized tests, which relies on conformity and compliance and not on the learner's creativity and innovation. So I think therein only I have stated that the process of evaluation, which is equally important, because if standardized tests happens to be the only way in which you are evaluating the learner's performance, then we are going wrong. We are definitely going wrong. So definitely it has to be a proper amalgamation among the content, the pedagogy, as well as the evaluation. Secondly, related to the role of the parents, as you have rightly mentioned, yes, very, very, very much so. And I completely, as a parent, more than an educator, I do agree to this point of view that if our approach and if our expectations out of the education system does not change, there cannot be any visible difference. And I also did mention that all the stakeholders, all the important people, education leaders, educators, education policy framers and makers, as well as parents, they all have to come together in order to make any kind of changes which we can term as visible or tangible. So yes, parents play a very, very important role. And there is absolutely no room in which we can deny, wherein we can deny that they play a very, very important role, because I have seen instances where schools are taking certain progressive measures and parents are there resisting it. So I have seen that. So that is not how a system can prosper. So everyone has to come forward and they have to realize that no, it is not the outcome. The outcome is not a degree or a certificate or a lucrative job which the child can gain after completing the formal higher education. It is a way of life. So we are advocating a happy, fulfilling, creative way of life that the child will be gifted with a very proper education.
Ma'am, you as previously I asked about revolutionary steps. You, ma'am, told that will it be right to apply like revolutionary steps back, because we can see from the independence we just experienced these things on many sectors like economic sectors, like we were not focusing on like small things. We try to revolutionize the whole system. As we can see today, the condition of India is that we have developed service sector, but in industrial sector we are far lagging behind. So ma'am, I was asking that will it be right to revolutionize it as a whole at a single time, or we have to bring a small change in that? And ma'am, second thing I want to ask is that if you get a chance, what change will you bring in the education system?
I think I have already answered that in the last maybe 1 hour or so. The changes that second part of your question is what kind of changes you would like to bring. I think I have already addressed those in very, very significant and very, very realistic terms. So I won't be repeating that because I said that what are the changes that are required. So I think I have already addressed that.
Thank you for highly inspiring time with us, ma'am. The remarkable depth of understanding of the education system made with generic most improving and informative. Thank you so much. And to the audience, your outstanding patience could not have come at a better time than when we needed each and every participates on board. Guys, you're nothing short of incredible. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, audience.
Most welcome. It had been a wonderful experience being with all of you and interacting with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.